to Aware. We are dedicated to communicating information that inspires your positive growth and change. Are you interested in a peaceful planet? Are you interested in optimal health? Are you living with purpose? Are you enjoying your life? We realize each person can make a difference, and our mission is to empower your awareness. The choices that you make in every moment shape your life, and we encourage you to realize that you have your own answers and to always listen to your own truth. We invite you to stay aware. Hello, welcome to the Aware Show. I am Lisa Garr, and it is a true privilege to be here today because we are talking about one of my favorite subjects that applies to anyone with a body. If you have a body, this will apply to you. It's about self-empowered health today, and that's what we're talking about. And by the way, if you're listening to this on our podcast, or if you'd like to listen anytime on demand, you can listen to our podcast, which is The Aware Show, wherever you hear your podcasts. Just go to The Aware Show, and if you like something you hear and you think someone's going to be interested in it, go ahead and share it from there. Sharing is caring. So it's always a great place to listen on demand, because this show is going to be packed with information that leads us to a self-empowered health conversation. And I think that's very important in these days where you have shorter doctor's visits and a very complicated medical system. If you could do most of your homework and be your own health detective through things like self-testing and quizzes and nutrition, you can get to your doctor with the information and really continue beyond your doctor's visits with your own self-empowered health. And joining me today are two really wonderful people who have mastered and really created a lot of tools and stories that help us understand what that means to empower ourselves around our health. Laura Kunces is my first guest. She is the VP of Medical Strategies at Thorne Health Tech. And Thorne is a wonderful company. It's a health and technology company, which is so great that that goes together these days. And it's really one of the leading companies in the industry of supplements and personalized health. We're talking a lot about that today because she specifically has a wonderful, diverse background in nutrition, dietary supplement, research, and experience in clinical settings around sport. And that leads me to my next guest, who is Cory Greenberg, and he is in the world of athletics, of sport. He is a professional cyclist, dear to my heart, cycling. He is living with ulcerative colitis, and he, as a young cyclist, was diagnosed with IBD, and he kind of put his dreams of being a professional cyclist on hold until he was hospitalized. Well, when he was hospitalized, and he's going to join us to share his entire story with us, which is quite a journey. So welcome, Laura. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And hey, Cory, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good to see you.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about, starting with Laura, about some of the clinical studies that you've been involved with at Thorne about how to really discover your own empowerment around health. Why did you move in that direction personally and professionally?
It's a great question. I think I started in the field of nutrition and health, but just being an athlete myself. I grew up a swimmer through college, swam in college, and I was always that hungry kid, and food tasted so much better when you exercise, right? So I didn't realize it could be an actual profession until college. And I was like, wait, I can get paid to do this. This is amazing. Yeah. So I really did move in that direction pretty quickly. And I just found like sport and nutrition to be such a fun avenue. They go hand in hand. It really just speaks to that whole health mantra. But I found Thorne through a lot of my work and being an athlete, just looking for really high quality dietary supplements, things that I know I could take that aren't at GNC or Vitamin Shop or, things like that off the shelf, where, you're looking for research back ingredients. You're looking for things that a doctor would recommend, stuff that you can trust. So that's really how I landed on Thorne. And I've done tons of dietary supplement studies and different studies looking at diet and exercise with a slew of different athletes, anything from cyclists to Ironman triathletes to ultra runners. And then also a bunch of different populations where people are clinically ill, like cancer, children, things with gut health and, pretty much anything under the sun. It's a really great opportunity at Thorne because we have so many products and so many different populations that really, there's so many things that you can study.
There is. I think it's what I was talking about earlier, a really amazing conversation to have. Our own ability these days to access testing, which you'd have to usually go to a doctor and he'd order a panel and you'd have to get the lab test done and you have to pay for that doctor's visit and then wait several weeks for the next doctor visit that tells you what the results of the tests are and then have to go through more testing. I mean, it's definitely, we've all been through it, and it is, I feel there's got to be a better way. And I'm curious why and how what you feel about testing, about personalized testing.
Yeah, I also find it's funny too. Like, even if you go to the doctor, sometimes you never get that understanding of what the results were. Nowadays, at least, we have portals where you can kind of check some electronic medical records and you might actually get a value from a blood draw or something, but you still might not have a full understanding of what that means in terms of like clinical relevance. Mm-hmm. So I think this whole idea that our world is moving into this ability where you can now buy blood work or buy microbiome testing or, whatever this type of testing that you want done, you can kind of do it on your own. And if you still want your hand held, you can take it to your doctor, or have a virtual telehealth appointment with a healthcare professional and review the results and say, now what? Like, I did this test. Is this true? Is this real? Is this how I feel? So I think it's extremely cool that this is where we're at today now and the end of 2022, but I don't even know where we're going to be in 10 years from now, but I can imagine it will be even more than this.
Right. This is the way forward. Now, Cory, you've been through quite a journey with this. You have, tell us a little bit about your story as a cyclist and how you discovered IBD, which stands for
inflammatory bowel disease.
Okay.
Yeah. So my story started in high school when I found cycling and the passion for riding bikes. And I was always a very athletic person. So whenever I gravitated towards a sport, I wanted to do it full on and compete. And so when I found cycling at 17, I got a bike and I said, you know what, within 3 months, I want to try a race. And so I did. And I found that I had a lot of success in that. And so it was an instant for me kind of hook. And I was all in. So I knew quite early on that I wanted to try to see if I could have a professional career at it. And I was able to get plugged into within LA. There was a development program which develops young riders and takes them to races throughout California and the nation and even overseas. And so at that time, I was fortunate enough to start racing for a team in Santa Monica. And through that help, I was able to then get to these, national level races and start to have some success and find this pathway towards a professional career. But around 22, I was at a bike race and started to have some sort of complications when I went to the restroom. And that was kind of the first time I really started to notice that something was off within my gut health. And so I went to a gastroenterologist and was diagnosed at that time with what's called sigmoiditis. So that is the sigmoid portion of your colon, the very low end portion of your colon. So it was an inflammatory condition, a form of IBD, but a very mild form. And I really, at the time, I was talking to the doctor about what I should do, and I was prescribed like enemas and suppositories. And this is something that, like, as a young person who's surrounded by teammates and traveling, like, that's just, it's really difficult to deal with. It's embarrassing. It's not easy to talk about. And especially when you have to, administer those types of medications, you don't want to, be around anybody, that's a very personal thing. So at that age, I really didn't pay much attention to, what this disease was and what this condition kind of really entailed. It was like, okay, my doctor said, do this. I just did that. And I kept trucking along. But unfortunately, that disease ended up progressing. Even while my career was progressing as a young athlete, I got to a point where the condition took over the entirety of my colon, to where I couldn't eat, sleep. I was living on the bathroom floor. Unfortunately, one night my mom found me sleeping there, and it just had progressed to the point where I didn't have a normal life anymore. I couldn't ride a bike. I couldn't go to school. So I was hospitalized, and during that time, I was given a colonoscopy, which confirmed that it was the entirety of the colon now that was inflamed. And the decision was to be either you'd have to remove the colon, which would completely, change my whole path of life and my dreams of being a cyclist, or just having a normal routine and a normal life as an individual.
That was the solution, was to
That
remove.
that is
Wow.
one of them. And then the other option was to start biologics, which medications that are injected, and they target specific areas. Specifically with this medication, your colon. So I took that route, of course, and luckily enough that took hold and was able to contain the condition. But subsequently, I had to learn what IBD really was, because now it had gotten to a point where it was making super life altering changes. And so I had to figure out really quick, what is IBD? What can I do? How can I tackle this? And for me, as a cyclist, we always kind of approach things in a nature of like, how do I get to the finish line first? What can I do? What supplements can I take? What can I be eating? What kind of bikes could I be using? Like, we look at all aspects, your coaching, mental. And so that's kind of the approach I took towards treating this condition. I kind of looked at it like, all right, I want to get to remission. That's a finish line for me, and I want to get there and stay there. So what can I do? And so at that point, I had to really put a team of people around me together. And there wasn't a lot of information. I had my gastroenterologist, who knew the medications and kind of knew the standard way, but didn't really give me a lot of information regarding diet, with my training on the bike, mental health, stress reduction, just all these different aspects that needed to be looked at to have a holistic approach. And that's kind of something that I kind of had to garner myself and create myself. And so 10 years ago, I didn't have the ability to go take an at-home gut health test and kind of figure out, what type of
Right.
things were going on. So
It's true. It didn't exist 10 years ago. And this awareness around colitis and intestinal disease hasn't been in the forefront until, I think, society has come up with these chronic conditions. And most of your immune system, now we've discovered, lives in the gut, right, Laura? So people are getting sicker and sicker and need better solutions than the drugs that just work on the symptoms or the surgery that takes out the entire function of the colon. So tell me why, or what you think self-testing is, and so we can really understand this from a very basic level. What is self-testing?
I think that self-testing really is multifactorial. It's it is the ability to take an at-home test, whether it's prick your finger for a little bit of blood or spit into a tube of saliva, or collect a microbiome sample. But it could be as simple as like wearing a wearable, like wearing a watch and, tracking your sleep, or even like something like a Fitbit, tracking your steps and just trying to figure out, there you go.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out like what it is that may be influencing your day to day and like how it's relating to your symptoms. And it really isn't just, it doesn't stop at testing though. When you think about it, like you do have to read, like Cory was saying, like you have to get immersed in what's going on with you. Like you need to be reading about it. You need to read blogs, you need to read science papers, you need to listen to podcasts, seek out the experts of people who are like talking about these things to be like, that's probably what's going on with me. And so testing is one portion of it. And it really is, multifactorial.
Yes. So I also have been through autoimmune disease, thyroiditis, and various symptoms of that. But I readdressed it with my diet. I started there. And I'm curious, Cory, so I took out wheat and dairy and all nightshades and most grains, because I found those did the same thing to me, Cory, which was just doubling over pain, spending the night on the bathroom floor, myself and my daughter. So it tends to be carried down genetically, I believe. So you could look back into your family and see who might have not addressed this in maybe 50 years ago and died early from this, because that's what happens if you don't get a hold of it. So did you change your diet, Cory?
Yes. So I have a funny situation where when I was in the hospital, I had been on a liquid diet for quite some time because of the nature of the condition. I wasn't able to digest anything. But when the doctor approved the first thing I could eat, I got a grilled cheese sandwich in the hospital, and it's kind of funny because it tasted so good. I can vividly remember like that, after weeks of fluid only diet, to have a grilled cheese. But if you look back on it, it's kind of funny. It's like it's a fried sandwich with cheese.
It's terrible. It's not funny. It's terrifying.
Yeah. So there was this disconnect, right? Like that was the extent of knowledge in terms of nutrition, for what I was kind of being subjected to. I'm a firm believer that everybody has a path in terms of their scope of where they work. So my gastroenterologist and I, we have a great setup in terms of the pathway that he put me on, but that needs to be supplemented with looking at your diet and looking at other aspects. And so I early on had a few tests done on my own to figure out kind of what I should and shouldn't be eating, what would cause some sort of inflammatory response within the body, and then started to wean those out. And then over time, as more and more information and more tests have become available, and I work with dietitians, I've been able to kind of fine tune that. And I know from experience how hard that can be for people. I experienced that some years ago, where you're kind of like left in this place of, okay, what should I do? My doctor says do this, or someone recommends this. You might be given a list of supplements you should be taking. You walk into your local chain store and you're kind of like overwhelmed. Like, how much should I take? How often? When should I wean off this? Or what should I be eating? And so that was kind of one of the things that really stuck out to me, of like, there's just this big question mark. And I think it can be quite overwhelming for people. And I know through my personal experience of like cultivating a diet and having to adjust that over time, because obviously this is a very dynamic environment within your gut. And so I went like gluten-free, dairy-free, avoiding, certain things like oats and quinoa, because the fiber and the digestive hardships that it caused on my gut might be different from somebody else. But those are the little things I started to have to really pay attention to and avoid. And I think the average person that I come across with these types of issues tends to, say, oh, I have an upset stomach today, but doesn't really put one and one together to figure out what makes that situation in your gut, the way it is. And so that's a big thing that I've kind of, over the last 10 years brought up.
Right. So you've really changed. Laura, is there a specific test that helps determine what food allergies you are prone to?
Yeah, definitely. And I was gonna mention too, with like Cory, a lot of that's trial and error, which is so not fun to deal with. And I think what's really cool about testing now is like we've gotten to the point where there has been so many tests and there's so much data, and now companies are really taking into account like symptoms and how people feel subjectively with that objective data from the test itself to help spit out a more accurate option for helping the scenario. And there's lots of allergy testing, whether you're going to do finger prick or, from a blood sample. Your gut microbiome is going to tell you a lot about some of those foods that you have intolerances to. And like some of it is just like gut bacteria. And in your case, maybe not so much, but for people who with more like IBS type symptoms, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, those things, sometimes it's just a simpler solution than some of the stuff that you've had to go through. So it really is like thinking about the whole picture of the person. You mentioned genetics, that's a portion of it, but that doesn't like seal your fate, unfortunately, good thing. You might be more prone to having something, but there is stuff that you can do to like better yourself at an earlier age so that you don't like run into that scenario down the line.
Right. I remember speaking with a gastroenterologist one time over the phone. And he said, in order for you to determine whether or not you have Crohn's or colitis, you would have to eat wheat for 2 weeks and then test. And I'm like, there's no way I would put myself through that. And I thought, God, what an archaic suggestion. So Thorne, and I know you're big on the self-testing, and there's a website that you can go to, which is theawareshow.com/Thorne. And there's a number of tests on there. How would someone get started if they just want to go into their first test? Would they go after a food sensitivities test? Do you think someone should start with a sleep test, or just what's best? How do you find out what's best?
Yeah, I like to tell people like, okay, first things first, think about this. Like, how's your foundational diet, right? Like, how do you eat on a regular basis? Do you think you could be doing better, or do you eat pretty healthy? Okay, like start there. Depending on your response, like what are your issues, right? Do you have issues sleeping? Are you looking to become pregnant? Are you trying to fix some gut issues that may be affecting your brain, your athletic performance, your liver, a bunch of other stuff too, which is just really cumbersome. But start with like really kind of what your goal is. And then from there, either think about starting with a actual test, like a take home test, which will measure pretty much anything. You could do hormones, it'll measure vitamins, it might measure bacteria in your gut.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So can you test for things like SIBO? Because that's a big sleeper.
It like a gut microbiome test, at least from Thorne, doesn't specifically test for SIBO, but if you do have SIBO or if you've had SIBO in the past, it will walk you through different questions, and then based on what's present in your gut, it will suggest you a specific diet to follow, some other lifestyle modifications that you may or may not want
That's
to do
great. That's
that will
great.
reduce stress, whatever, and then some recommendations for the supplements that may be best for you.
And so people know SIBO stands for, what does it stand for?
Small intestinal microbial
Bacterial
overgrowth.
overgrowth.
Yeah,
Right.
bacterial overgrowth.
And I get lost in the acronyms, but I know that it sucks. And that's one thing that's true. And so there are tests there where you can they're either saliva, or you can do a stool sample, or you could do a finger prick for the blood, and urine, right? Those are the four types that you can use. And it suggests different ways to which, based on what you need. If it's sleep, they can test for cortisol. And it's just incredibly high functioning these days that you can actually do a cortisol test from a home test kit. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
I know. I think about the days 10, 12, 15 years ago when I started doing research, and it has come a long way, trust me, especially from a gut microbiome standpoint. It used to be a very terrible process of collecting a sample, and now it's a lot simpler.
Yeah, and honestly, it's something that takes a little bit of motivation, but it takes a lot of education. And if you, especially around the colon issues, and so many people have had undiagnosed colon disease, and that's led to unfortunate, death. And if you could get a hold of that early, and it's not difficult to do a stool specimen and just pack it in the little box and send it away, that's all you basically have to do. Then you get a report back, and what does the report give you?
It'll give from the gut microbiome test, it will give you a full breakdown of everything that it sees. So they'll give you scores about your inflammation levels, how your gut is affecting your mental, like your enteric nervous system, which is like brain. It will give you digestion scores, so how well your gut is capable of digesting and absorbing and utilizing the nutrients that you're consuming. It will go through immune health. We talked about that. It is about like 70 or 80% of your immune system is in your gut. So really like a look at how optimized your gut is if or when you come in contact with things that will affect your immune system. It will give you different scores about fungi, parasites, anything like pathogens that may be in your system. We have a lot of people who, go on vacation and something happens and they come back and they don't feel great. And it's probably not necessarily an actual issue, but it might be something that you contracted from water or food or something from another country. So it's like a really great test to be able to do on your own and not have to make a doctor's appointment, wait in the waiting room, and then, still do the same sort of process. You can kind of just do it in the comfort of your own bathroom.
Now, do you work with, I understand you have a relationship with the Mayo Clinic. Do you work with hospitals ever?
We do. We have a research and like a educational relationship with the Mayo Clinic, and we work with a lot of different hospital systems and doctors' offices to use this test with their patients. A lot of people are moving in this virtual health scenario. We have about, I think the number's around 45,000 healthcare professionals that are in the Thorne umbrella. So they either use our tests or our supplements or something. But it's a lot of people, and it's because of these options that they have that they don't necessarily have to go somewhere. It's all kind of this one-stop shop online, if you will.
That's very cool. So what happens is that you send in the sample and then you get back a description, a sheet that tells you what the blood results mean. Now, if anyone's ever had a blood result and it comes back, so most of the labs can send, or you can access them on a portal these days, you have no idea what they mean. And they test within the range of the area, and some says low, and you look like you're dying on your blood test reports. So does it give you some helpful information about what the reading is and then what to do about it, which is very cool?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I think that that's the other thing too, is a lot of these tests, you know, even if you go to a hospital and you get your blood done, and you end up going on your electronic portal online, it just gives you the value. It might not even give you an explanation of what the value is. Like, you know, how many people know what hematocrit is, or what, you know, basophils do in your white blood cells. And so it'll give you a full explanation, but then it also takes into account like things that you clicked off subjectively too. So, you know, maybe your weight has something to do with something, your activity level, your stress levels, your diet, you know, other factors of your lifestyle that might be influencing some of these numbers, and, you know, just about you specifically, which is great.
Okay, yeah, that's important. So you can find out that, but let's also talk as well about, you know, we're talking about intestinal issues, but what about things about sleep, weight loss, things that are also important to anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just as important as wearing like a fitness tracker. You know, I see a lot of people walking around with fitness trackers who track their sleep every single night, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't get a good night's sleep tonight."
I love
and I'm
doing
like,
that.
yeah, and I'm like, well, what's wrong? Why didn't you get a good night's sleep, or why has it been trending bad? You know, and I think that's when a test is necessary, to be like, okay, so I know I'm not sleeping well. Like, what is it that's causing this? And like, that's what these tests are really like informative for, you know, helping you figure out like, what is it that might be off. And so using the sleep test as an example, like, it's a small little urine sample. You do it 4 times throughout the day, and then you send it in, and it's looking at your melatonin levels that you want to be high at night to go to sleep, and your cortisol levels that you want to be low at night to go to sleep. And then when you wake up in the morning, you want those to be opposite, your melatonin low, your cortisol a little bit higher. And so if those are off during the day, it's definitely going to affect your sleep. And so if you have been tracking yourself on your watch and you know you're not sleeping well, and then you see this in your urine, you're like, okay, I got to do something that's going to like fix my cortisol and increase my melatonin so I can fall asleep tonight. And, you know, like that's where these like lifestyle habits will start to come in, and you're like, okay, I'm going to, you know, put my phone down before I go to sleep tonight and not look at it. Or I'm going to, you know, take a cold shower before I go to bed to cool my body off and get ready for sleep. And I'm going to turn on my noisemaker, you know, whatever it needs to be to like get yourself prepared. And then maybe it is a supplement, maybe it is a dietary change, maybe it's changing your workout routine, you know, whatever it may be.
And there's also a bunch of free quizzes that you can take on the website, which I started with. And they're free. Anyone can just go on there to the website that you see down below Laura's name. It's theawareshow.com/thorn, and it's THORNE with an E. And you just go under Get Started, and there's quizzes that you can take about sleep, about gut, about what you're eating, about weight loss, all sorts of things. Let's talk about that for a second. Weight loss is a huge topic. It's $1 billion industry. What types of quizzes or systems do you have designed around discovering your metabolism rate or things like that?
Your metabolism can be affected by so many things. We know that now, you know, obviously your gut health, your thyroid. So I think the quizzes are a great spot to start if you may or may not, like, you know, maybe what's going on. Like you recognize that your energy is low, or you want, you know, better sports performance, or if you were there for weight loss, it will ask you through a bunch of questions, and we'll go through like, has this been recent? Has this been a new thing? And really supplements are there to support your weight. Like, let's be real. There is no magic pill or anything that you can do. Like, it's a process. It's a journey. It's something that you have to do to incorporate with like diet and with exercise and stuff too, but it will suggest something that's probably going to be best for you based on the way that you answer the questions. So, I think that's one important thing to remember about supplements. Like, people always forget that it's like, oh, okay, like I tried this for a month and it didn't work. And it's like, well, you know, it's part of a process. And so you have to give it time, but you also have to give it a good effort.
So it can give you a window into maybe metabolism, or if leptin isn't triggering or things like that. Is it that sophisticated?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll go through different questions. It might ask you other stuff about your age, because hormones might play a role in that. It might ask you about some other lifestyle goals. And so we have tons of different options that can support weight, whether it's in between meals that you have issues with, like snacking or your blood sugar or something. It can give you suggestions about maybe other things that will support weight, like specifically managing blood glucose and insulin levels to help support that healthy carbohydrate metabolism. And or it might also suggest stuff for just really helping you like stay focused and maintain energy levels throughout the day, so that you do feel energized, so that you will take the stairs when you walk upstairs, park
cool.
farther away.
Sure. Very interesting. So, Cory, I wanted to ask you, because I know that you're a part of a very exciting part of a world tour pro team called Human Powered Health, and they are an amazing organization. And I just so appreciate the goal of the organization. And if anyone's a cycling fanatic like me, you can see Human Powered Health racing on some of the big tours, the world tours. They have a women's team. So cool. You're on the men's team. And shout out for women's cycling, because it really has gotten to be big this year. First year ever, there's a women's division of the Tour de France. How that didn't happen for 100 years, I don't know, but it is now, and that's really cool. But tell me a little bit about your relationship with Human Powered Health, Cory, and how they're supporting your foundation, your testing, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So, Human Powered Health has been around for 17 years under different iterations, different names. It was known before as like Rally or Optum. And so early on in my career, I was getting to race. Once I reached a particular level in my development, I was getting to race against the earlier iterations of this team. And it was always like the one team in the United States that everybody desired to be on. It was the top. And so over the years, I've always aspired to get to that place. And I can vividly remember, like, when I was going through some of the worst moments of living with ulcerative colitis and having doubts of whether I was going to even be able to ride again, I always dreamt of getting to that place where I could race for this particular team. And so you fast forward 10 years, and everything just kind of has come together. I was able to get healthy, get to a place where I can get back on track with terms of my cycling career, and eventually become a professional, and then make my way to Europe, and in that same time starting my IBD awareness efforts. And so fast forward to now, kind of everything has come together. You have the world's leading team in terms of health and wellness, and you have an individual like myself who espouses this movement as an individual living with a chronic illness who had to overcome that to achieve their cycling career, and someone who's a big proponent of IBD awareness and chronic illness awareness. And so you kind of meld all those together. It's really like the perfect time and perfect place to start working together. So it means the world as like a bike racer to join the team that I've always wanted to be with, but to join it at this moment in time where we can really focus on health and wellness. Mm-hmm. And there's a platform the team has kind of cultivated years of hard work to get to this point. So as a bike racer, it's amazing. And as a patient, it's extra special to be with a program like this. It's
a great example of how athletic programs should and could run based on the amateur level and on the pro level. If anyone is you're a weekend warrior or wants to learn about, athletics, cycling, whatever it is, it really helps, first of all, to join any type of community that exists around you, a hiking club, a biking club. When you exercise together, statistics prove that you are more likely to exercise if you're exercising with a community. Key number one. Then when you get involved with the community, then you can start talking about, your adrenaline rises, all your happy hormones come out, your cortisol rises, all this, not cortisol, but your, what is it called, Laura, when you're happy?
Your dopamine. Yeah, serotonin.
Yeah. So all of that rises when you start to exercise. It happens within 7 minutes of moving your blood. You release all of these great happy hormones. So when you're out working out together, even if it's walking, gardening, whatever it is that you're doing, join a community that involves themselves in something that moves you forward, gives you accountability, gets you outside, gets all those great chemicals running in your body. Always been a big fan of that. And I've always talked about that on the Aware Show. And then this whole thing about performance testing and performance supplements is so interesting, because then you start to think about things. Well, how can I make this walk better? How can I get more out of this ride? How can I take my body to new limits? And when you do that, you stimulate that fabulous thing called that mitochondria, which does a lot of stuff. It helps you sleep better. It helps reverse the aging process. It helps you regrow your cells and help them replicate properly. It prevents stagnation. I mean, there's so many things that growing your mitochondria and re-stimulating that does. And it doesn't have to be through, the like stimulants. You can do that just through exercise. But my question here is, Cory, when you get to that place where you are pushing your body beyond the normal limits, like you're really asking more from your body to go that extra mile, to get that really incredible feeling of accomplishment, ultimately, what do you do in order to take it to that level? I'm just curious, as a top level athlete.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a very loaded question in terms of, I kind of a few different viewpoints on that. But from an athletic perspective, I think you're afforded, let's say, kind of the leading edge in terms of what is available to the consumer. And so looking at, for me, the first thing is, how can I support my daily training? How can I support my body to get to the next level and to recover quicker? But then you have to add on that, I'm also living with chronic inflammation. So I'm someone who has to pay extra attention to the inflammatory issues that I'm kind of going through. And obviously sport creates inflammation, right? We're stimulating a response to achieve a new level of fitness. And in order to do so, you have to obviously push your body to a place. You have to allow the cells to adapt and regrow. And when they regrow, they're at a new, more adapted place. So, but having to do that with chronic inflammation, with a gut disorder, I have to look at it from a few different perspectives. And the most important thing is fatigue management. And so because I have an overactive immune system, I really have to pay a lot of attention to making sure that the levels of fatigue in my body are under control. And this is something that the common everyday person could do with your Fitbit or with your Apple Watch or whatever. I'm a huge proponent of tracking variable heart rate. And so every morning I'll look at, what is my resting heart rate, but also my variable heart rate. So looking at that sympathetic, parasympathetic response, that how your body is actually functioning in terms of your nervous system. And that kind of gauges, first and foremost, where I'm kind of guiding my daily routine, whether it's sport, whether it's just going to work or whatever it may be. That'll help me kind of manage the overall fatigue and decide, okay, how am I going to, is my body even ready? Is my body ready to perform, or does it need rest? So that's something that I look at first and foremost. And then I look at how can I support my body through the endeavors that I'm putting it in. So when it comes to gut health, I'm looking at probiotics. I'm looking at how are my vitamin D levels, because that, is a direct correlation to your immune system and everything under the sun when it comes to, the minerals and vitamins within your body, because a balanced body has the best fighting chance to overcome any sort of ailments or, external stresses that are being applied to the body. So that's where I look. And then obviously I'm looking, when it comes to diet, how can I fuel and recover? So I'm paying a little bit more attention to kind of the daily routine. Am I doing a bit more strenuous workouts? Do I need to eat a little bit more protein because I've been, working a bit more in the gym, or do I need more carbohydrate because the intensities of my training require it? So that's kind of where I approach it. And that's how I even look at my approach towards chronic illness and inflammatory bowel disease. Is it's never stagnant. It's always, you're going with the waves of your daily routine and where you're at holistically. And so that's how I look. And so for the average person, having the ability to kind of have these tests that Thorne puts out, and being able to track your variable heart rate through your Apple Watch or your resting heart rate, it gives the person the ease of knowing these are the small tools that I can use on the daily to be able to guide me. And that's, I think, the most important thing that people can kind of take away in how I approach it, because at the end of the day, we only have so much time, and we only dedicate so much time. So however we bring people closer to an easier way to achieve that, without taking up that valuable time and the feeling of like that overburdened feeling of, oh, I got to read this, I got to do that, I have to do this. If we can kind of lump that together, and I think that's what Thorne is doing with the simplicity of their test and the pathway. To me, that's how I kind of approach everything. So
right. I mean, it's really, you're such an interesting case study because you are living with this inflammatory disease. And Laura, how many people live with autoimmune disorders these days? I mean,
a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. And I wouldn't even say Cory's living with it. He's thriving with it. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's really like the picture perfect type. To sum up that, like, you can still perform at an elite level, at a high level with these conditions. Like, it doesn't define you. Like, you just need to figure out what you need to do to overcome and, still succeed. So
I'm telling you, there are no excuses these days.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you can perform at the level that you are, Cory, anyone else who has autoimmune, and I do as well, living with an autoimmune dysfunction, but I don't suffer any effects of it because I have understood how to manage this through food and through self-testing and through self-monitoring with the wearables and so forth. I'm looking at my sleep all the time and how many hours I got and how many hours of that was REM and how much of that was light. And am I having too much caffeine, and should I take that back because that also adds to the inflammation? You hit on a really great topic, protein. And that's such a sensitive topic because, some people, of course, are vegan, some are vegetarian, some are paleo. There's so many different styles of eating out there. It's really specific to what works for you. Some proteins are harder to digest. Some, like, I can't do pea protein at all. And for me, I can't do casein proteins, anything that's whey based. Can't do that either. So it leaves me with animal choices. And I've tried everything. I've tried salmon bone protein. I've tried beef bone protein. I mean, I've settled on egg protein powder. But how many grams of protein do you get per day, Cory? If you can give us maybe an idea of what you do. And then Laura, if you could tell us what maybe the average person should be doing in terms of protein and athleticism.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I kind of look at I have a kind of a baseline that I try to aim for, and that's 4 times a day between 20 and 30 grams each meal. So I know that it's incredibly difficult to digest more than 30 grams in one sitting. So I'll try to break that up throughout the day. And I'm also someone who I usually have a protein shake before bed. That way I find that I have a deeper sleep, I recover better. I noticed that there's a better response with my variable heart rate through the night, and I'm more satiated. So I just try to break it up because it can be difficult to eat large amounts, especially when you're training every day. And I might have days where I'm burning 4,000 to 5,000 calories just in training. So trying to get 7,000 calories in a day is quite difficult. And if you're eating a dense protein, that's a lot. So I'm anywhere between probably 130 to 150 grams a day. And that's broken up between 4 to 5 meals. And to your point about, kind of going through in these different proteins and having to try what works for you, I've been in that same situation. And I know a lot of people with gut problems they walk into like your supermarket and they have 20 different varieties of proteins, and it's incredibly expensive to kind of figure out what to take and what works for you and what doesn't. And that's where getting these types of tests kind of allow you to pinpoint, hey, you might have a sensitivity to whey or you might not. And so then you can kind of, gravitate towards a product that your gut can handle. And so
beautiful. Another great example about self-empowered health testing. Laura, for you, I mean, just look at from the weight loss perspective, have you heard that a protein, like just a basic protein shake before bed, is good for muscle?
Yeah, there's a lot of research to support that. I think Cory's plan and execution towards getting the protein in is great. I think a lot of Americans don't get enough protein. I think it's kind of to what you were saying, Lisa, that there's so many diets now. It might have not have been the case 20 years ago, but trends are looking more and more that people are eating less and less protein. And it's really important. It's extremely important for women. I think women eat a lot less than men. And so there's, and being a high level athlete, it is trying to get those like bouts of protein in multiple times a day, spaced out so that you are like utilizing what you're taking in. Another great option though, for people who are having issues like you, Lisa, with different types of protein sources is amino acids. It's the broken down type protein. So typically those might not have casein, they might not have the pea proteins, so
Great.
yeah, it's another option. So like it's really like there's so many good options on the market now that like it isn't an excuse that anymore to be like, oh, there's nothing out there for me.
That
because
is
there
right.
is.
Right. Amino acids are the protein building blocks, right? They're what make up or break down after the protein is digested. So going right after the amino acid is a brilliant idea. What types of amino acids? And by the way, that website, theawareshow.com/thorn with an E, THORNE, has been a wonderful gift from Human Powered Health and Thorn to offer everyone a 25% discount on all supplements. So that's very helpful. And it is a lot less expensive to go after the specific type of protein that you know will work for your body rather than going out there and spending $60-$70 on a shake mix that you'll never use. So great idea. What was I asking you? Oh yeah, amino acids. I think I need a memory supplement. So what types of amino acids work?
I usually recommend people start with a mix of branched chain amino acids and essential amino acids that together you're going to get like the most bang for your buck. And you really don't need too much, like maybe 5 grams or so a day of those together. And typically they're really easy to digest. They typically have a good flavor. You can mix it into other stuff. So it's not like it's inconvenient to consume, if you will.
And it's vegetarian as well, right?
Depending on your source, but usually it is. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's always vegan though, just based on the sources of typically some of the amino acids. But yeah, I'm sure you can find some out there that are.
Right. That's why I went with the egg protein. It's not vegan, but it is, works for my body. And it was one of the pea protein. Oh, that is so overrated. I don't understand. Who would ever sit down to a giant bowl of peas and eat them?
There's a good mix of pea and rice, though.
Sorry, pea, but you're tough. I don't know. It seems to be pervasive, though. It's in everything these days. Pea protein seemed to be a really great idea, but in small amounts, I think is probably a little bit more digestible. I don't know if you've ever had a problem with that, Cory.
No, I don't typically.
Okay, sorry.
Protein, so,
Didn't mean to throw shade on the pea. Yeah. It's probably a great protein source. Okay, so all of this, once you get this, you maybe have gone through the testing and you've learned what works for your body and you've found a specific supplement that works for your body, then is this something that you can go to your doctor with and say, look, I did this, it gave me this result, and have you had success with that? Do doctors accept this type of self-testing protocol?
Yeah, I would say that, a lot of people do this type of at-home testing if they feel like they are comfortable with doing it on their own and then implementing recommendations and a new journey afterwards. But some don't, and that is the instance of where you can take it to your healthcare provider and just say, listen, I got these results. Like, do you want to confirm them? Do you feel comfortable with these? Like, I have been feeling this way and this is kind of showing that I do feel this way. Like, is this a good idea? And, the proof is in the pudding, right? So it's like, how are you going to refute that your blood work looks like this? Or, so the other thing that Thorn has that, pretty much every doctor may use anyways, is that we have labs that you can do at Quest. So like everybody has a Quest in their city and you've heard of that lab and it's extremely reputable and,
Easy.
So like, yeah, exactly. And so you just go in and make sure you're fasted before you go, so you have the most accurate results. But it is, that's the proof, and like those labs are everywhere and they're they're certified. So it's something you can trust.
So you can do a comparison.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing about health tracking, and I think it's so funny that, you know, we go to the dentist twice a year for preventative, you know, checkups, that like we don't go to the doctor twice a year. And so this is the type of opportunity to like get that extra tracking data point in, is to really do it. And you can do it more than twice a year if you want
So
to. You
true.
know,
I mean,
if you're looking to optimize, it should probably be more than twice a year.
if you have children, you bring your child to the pediatrician once or twice a year, because that's your responsibility, having a child. And then as an adult, you just throw it all out the window. But I don't suggest that. I mean, that's what health literacy is it's empowering you to not put your head in the sand when something is wrong, and to continue the education beyond the doctor's visits. And Cory, I think you shared with me a little bit about your story of when you got out of the hospital, you were left with a now what situation, especially if you wanted to continue to do what you love, which is peak performance, high demand athleticism. And so this was kind of the only option for you, was to empower yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was it. Like, it was either you succumb to the condition and you're living in its shadow, or you overcome the condition. And I've gotten to a point where I don't say, hello, I'm Cory and I have IBD. I'm just, hi, I'm Cory, you know, and IBD just kind of comes up. You know, I'm a big advocate of it because I see so many people living with it. I mean, diagnosed, there's 1 in 100 people within the United States have IBD. So which consists of Crohn's and colitis. So there's two forms that come under that. And then you have those living with IBS, which is different from IBD, but also a gut issue. And but there's millions of other people who are going who are undiagnosed, and who are every day saying, you know, I'm living with something. It feels that I have some sort of issue, but I don't really know what's going on. So my kind of mission now, the way I use cycling, because cycling is such a unique sport where it's a global sport that partakes in communities, and we're able to then come to these communities. We race through the streets, people come and see us, and now you're impacting these local cycling communities, but also, you know, you're living with a condition that is a global condition, and you're able to then take the bike and use that as a means to impact these localized groups of people that have IBD or a chronic illness. And so you can get a great message across. So that's been, since I've left the hospital, it was first and foremost get healthy, and then, you know, try to achieve what I was trying to achieve prior to being hospitalized. But through that journey, I've been able to then kind of cultivate my own desire to be a IBD advocate. And, you know, every week I meet somebody new. And so this is a condition that's, you know, living throughout the world with many, many people. And luckily cycling takes me all over the place and I can interact with these folks. So
wow.
that's where
I mean, you're a great spokesperson for the sport. And I love that. I really love that you're not just self-absorbed in the athleticism, that you actually have a mission here, and that you are bringing more people to the sport, which is fantastic. And calling awareness with you, Laura, as well, of the millions of people that live with inflammation. And all we are served is a television ad that says, eat your pizza, eat your hamburger, take this medication. And that is absolutely the wrong programming. That is absolutely not what we should be digesting through the media. We should be digesting health literacy that brings people the idea that you do not have to live with the inflammation, that you don't need to take a pill. You might be completely allergic to every food on that pizza. And there are ways to, you know, of course I miss pizza, but I've learned how to find gluten-free, make my own dairy-free, and have a complete meal that looks like pizza and it tastes like pizza, and it's absolutely fine. And I feel better because of it. And it's such an empowering conversation because I can think better, I can talk clearer. And I'm one that also had a very traumatic brain injury and have healed my entire brain and rewired it from a very, very difficult injury. So it's definitely, I'm a proponent of someone who can live beyond your crisis, and you don't have to live with the inflammation. You don't have to live with the injury. And so thank you both so much. This has been super empowering for me. Love talking to both of you, and I hope that we've inspired people who might be living with these conditions to understand there's a thriving way to live beyond your condition. So thank you both. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Great stuff. And again, if you're listening to this on the podcast, or if you want to share this with your friends, you can go to the Aware Show podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast. Click share right there, or give us a comment, and we'd love to hear from you. And you can always share the information with others. I am Lisa Garr, and remember, you can get that great discount there from the website at theawareshow.com/thorne, THORNE. And until next time, I invite you always to stay aware.